Today, I'm headed to the shooting ground to meet up with world champion shooter Zach Kienbaum. Discovering his tips, his techniques, and all the little secrets that have helped him become one of the finest shotgun shooters in the world. We're gonna cover a lot of ground today. From Zach's stance on hard focus.
That moment your brain is saying now that you feel that sear disengage, that's the moment where everything has to be fluid and in sync, and then the most intense hard focus visually on the target.
Timing and cadence.
The longer your gun stays in 3 feet as you're triggering that shot, the more room for error you have.
And a heap of other great advice to those looking to master the game of sporting clays.
Zach, I am very excited for today.
Should be good. The weather's good breaking. I think we're gonna have some good weather here for the next couple of days. It should be fun.
We are going to explore mastering sporting clays, gleaning a little bit of your knowledge. I mean, you're quite good. 3 national championships.
I'm pretty good.
Current reigning world FitAsk champion.
Yeah.
We're going to look at sporting clays, maybe touch on FitAsk, and I don't know, milk you for every piece of information you're worth in half an hour.
In a half an hour. Took me 30 years. I think we could, 30 plus years. I think we can cram it probably into a half an hour.
All right. So, should we shoot some clays?
Let's
and then,
do it. Let's
and
do
then
it.
talk some more.
Sounds good.
So before we shoot the first stand, the big question, I suppose, is, joking aside, 30 years of learning, what do you think the biggest sort of breakthroughs you've had in your shooting are? Like in terms of, I guess, technical performance, physical performance, mental performance. Is there anything that stands out, or is it cumulative?
I think it's really, truly cumulative. For 20-something years, I was like, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was trying really hard. I wanted it so bad. There's no pill or anything I can give anyone that's not going to make them want it like that.
Is it important to want it?
It is. I think the best shooters in the world, they want it a little more than the other guys. They're willing to put the extra work in. They're willing to not give up. I mean, I had plenty of really poor performances in that time frame.
You are only human, unfortunately.
I am human. I've been doing it literally since I was 12 years old. I was always good. I mean, I was one of the best juniors in the country. I was, even out of juniors, I was doing very well in the kind of overall. But it's just the experience of failure. You know, I tell my students all the time, I don't always know, we're not always going to know exactly what we're doing wrong, but you should know what you're trying to do. And in time, with enough failure, you see that presentation, you see a course similar to where you failed before, and you know what not to try.
There is no shortcut.
There's no shortcuts in this game. You've got to put the work in. I know a lot of people want it really fast, but it takes time, no question.
Well, I think you see so many gains early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you can get to a half-decent standard very quickly.
Pretty quickly.
But that final 20%,
Yeah.
it really slows down, and you see people either giving up, getting frustrated, trying new things, buying new guns, literally
Right.
trying to hack their way into
Right.
the experience.
People try to, if you could buy success in this sport,
You'd make a lot of money. If you
you'd
could
make
sell
a
that
lot of
success
money
pill.
if you could, right. But if your ego can't handle failure, it is a game of failure. This is not Skeet or Trap, which in the United States are games of perfect. You literally have to be perfect. This is a game of missing. So in my opinion, this is a game of failure.
So you have to be
You
comfortable
have to be,
with that?
you
missing?
have to be comfortable with failure. Absolutely.
I'm very comfortable
We're
with
shooting,
failure. Maybe too comfortable.
we're shooting really difficult targets for the most part.
Yep.
So you can't, if your ego can't handle missing or losing, then you're gonna drift off into another sport or do something else.
I presume that's where we strike the balance, right? You need to be happy with missing, but hungry to not miss in equal measure.
Correct.
All right, should we get after this, Stan?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So being hungry to master sporting clays is actually important if you want to master sporting clays. From what Zach just said, it's not going to fall into your lap if you don't work for it.
Yeah, can I put my excuses in? It's not my gun, blah, blah, blah.
You know, Johnny, I think one of the key things, it's a simple concept, but, you know, we point shotguns. Okay, we're not aiming them. So in my opinion, the most important aspect of what we have to learn when we learn to shoot is visual discipline. That could mean a lot of things to people, but to me, visual discipline, I want to shoot with two eyes open if possible. Eye dominance can play a big factor in this. We're not going to get too in-depth.
There's a lot of exceptions to the rule, but everyone says two eyes is just preferable.
Right. If possible, we want to be shooting with two eyes open, and we want to have extreme hard visual focus on the clay target. That means if we can see detail, if we can see rings in the US with more sun than you're used to, if we can see a shiny spot or a shadowy spot, just something specific on the bird that we can see as we fire, that's huge. But again, conditions affect that. Everyone's personal visual acuity affects that. Regardless, I want to see the bird as well as that individual shooter can as they're pulling the trigger. Okay.
I guess a lot of that isn't to do with seeing the bird, but about actually making sure you're focusing on the bird.
Intense, hard focus. But realize that God did not design our eyes, the human eye, to hard focus on a moving object. So we can really only attain that for like 1.5 to 2 seconds. So it's really critical that we know where we're going to kill the bird, so we know when we're going to engage the most focus. A lot of these birds are in the air for more than 1 to 2 seconds, a lot longer at times. So in that regard, I want to time my effort of hard focus into the trigger. So as I'm pulling the trigger, I see the bird the best.
So there's a hard focus point, which means there's a completely chilled out point too.
Correct. We start with a kind of a soft focus. We're not looking at anything specific.
Just taking it all in.
Taking it all in. I want to set my eyes out. If you think like a camera, which you'd be very familiar with, I want to make sure as I call pull by focus, I set that visual focus out at the distance that the bird's going to appear. As the bird comes out, I want to start moving with it, and I'm looking at it, but I'm not going to like zoom in or lock in till it's approaching the kill point.
You're not spending too much time locked into the gun being hungry for the shot.
Correct.
Okay.
And then as I pull the trigger, I want to be seeing the bird the clearest. Pulling the trigger is not the end of the process. I want to hold that hard focus on it till it breaks or until it should have broken. When your eyes are on the target and you're focusing the way we're talking about, it's telling your hands and body what to do. Okay, when we do that, it's not all hand-eye coordination. In my opinion, it's kind of body-eye coordination.
Just out of interest, I think it's worth clarifying that just looking at it hard enough isn't going to make you move a gun or do any other thing.
So much more to it.
It's a key point, but actually putting good moves together and understanding the basics that come.
It's understanding visual discipline. See the bird best at the trigger. Watch the bird until it breaks. That's going to allow your body and hands and gun to follow through on the shot correctly, not stop. Okay. Obviously, we have to add in a lot of technique and understanding what to do with specific presentations.
Do they come first, or?
I think the vision comes first.
Interesting.
I really do. Understanding how to look at the target, not look at it too long, not try to hold hard focus too long, time that hard focus into the trigger, and allow yourself enough time in that 1.5 to 2 seconds to then watch the bird break.
So you're feeling the energy ramp up, it peaks, you go bang.
Correct.
Should we try it?
And in sporting clays, there's a huge element of that because a lot of birds come out quickly, and you want to shoot them quickly, look hard at them quickly. But here we're gonna have 2 crossers over the water here that take probably 2, 3, 4 seconds to get to the kill point. So it's a timing of hard focus. If you're a guy shooting a lot of skeet and trap, which we have here in America, every time a skeet and trap shooter comes to sporting clays, their tempo is too fast. They're paced up. They look hard at the bird immediately. They shoot immediately. Whereas sporting clays is a tempo. This is all a variety of tempo and speeds.
I guess if you just go full on, your eyes and brain are going to get tired much quicker.
Correct.
Should we try it?
Let's do it.
Let's go. So we've got a report pair of right to left crossers.
Right to left crossers.
Looking at the traps, going to be a bit of gap on these.
Pretty good gap. These are probably in the 45, 50 yard range. A good amount of spring, so they're moving pretty fast. I think it's important for a lot of people to understand lead is all dictated by angle and speed. So when you have a true crossing angle, that's going to take lead. How much lead is all variable to the speed of said target. I could throw you a really slow 50-yard crosser that takes minimal amount of lead, and I could throw you a screaming fast 20-yard crosser that takes a lot of lead. So it's
There's a
speed and
perspective
angle.
as well with gun speed and stuff. But
Correct.
usually, certainly looking at the shot cam stuff,
Yeah.
some things you think you gave loads to because you got such fast hands on it,
Right.
it wasn't that much. It's just
Right.
where the gun ended up felt like a lot.
Correct. And I think the other element of both of these targets is they do take probably 3 seconds to get from the trap to the kill point.
So
One of the worst things you could possibly do here is as soon as it comes out go to 100% full engagement of hard focus, because by the time it gets to the kill point, you're going to have burned up what your eyes are capable of, and your eyes are going to be coming off the bird. I want to feel comfortable that as I pull the trigger, I'm right in the middle of that 1.5 to 2 seconds of hard focus, so that I can pull the trigger with good focus and then hold that focus till the bird breaks. That's going to keep our gun, our body in sync with the bird slightly after the feeling of pulling the trigger and following through correctly.
let's see it.
Let's do it.
Are you looking at it or are you periphery?
I'm looking over there, I'm picking it up over there, but I'm not putting a ton of effort into hard focus till I've kind of started the gun on the front side of the bird. I'm starting to move with it, and I'm engaging more and more and more hard focus into the break point, into the trigger.
I know big crosses have a different tempo, but you can almost see from behind your gun moving fast and slowing into the focus, then whack. I know that's probably the target, but I watched it on the last pair as well. Like the gun and your eyes seem to focus and control in a bit of a line.
I think a huge mistake that a lot of people make is they read an article or they hear a coach or someone talk about just intense hard focus on the bird, but a lot of people forget that there is a gun in play. That I'm focusing on the clay target, but I'm not losing track of the muzzle in my peripheral vision. I'm not focusing on it, but it is there. More on a shot like this, crossers, it's more of a spatial awareness. How much space is between the target that I'm focusing on and the kind of ghosting or blurry phantom image of my muzzle that's out in front of the bird,
You're
moving
not
at the same
checking
speed.
it, correct, but you're obviously aware of that gap.
I'm aware of the space.
That's how you repeat a shot.
Correct.
Is being aware of similar space bang.
Correct. I mean, technique-wise, more of a pull-away style move. I'm inserting the gun. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm on the front side of the bird. I feel the speed just for a moment. Then I let my hands leave and open up that space between the target I'm focusing on and the blur of the gun out to the left.
And as you're progressing that gap, that's when the hard focus comes in, or
About the time when I'm syncing up and I leave the bird with the gun, I'm going in, I'm full focus on the bird, trying to see the bird better, we should say. If you had a shot cam on my gun in any given tournament, a sporting clay tournament where I have to shoot the pair 3 or 4 times, you'll probably see me pull away on half of them and insert a little bigger on the next 2 and shoot more maintain lead.
is that intentional, or is that just
It's just a reaction.
That's how the timing felt.
That's how the timing felt. We're not robots. We're not going to be able to insert the gun initially to a perfectly exact same place, pair after pair after pair.
And on a windy day like today, there will be some variation in targets,
Oh,
right?
no question. No doubt.
All right.
Get in there.
Well,
See it better. There we go. See it better.
more confident move when you see it, right?
Absolutely.
That's a
That pair compared to the pair prior, way more in control, meaning gun and target much more in sync. But I could tell that you just insert the gun front side, don't overthink that part. Start moving with the bird, ramp into hard focus.
For me on the first pair, obviously there's too much going through my brain there.
Right.
And the hard focus turned into a very stiff move.
Yep.
Whereas I think actually the second pair, understanding hard focus means now it's time to commit, let's make the move, let's
Right.
make it happen. Given that you're focused on the target, we know what we're doing.
Right.
The hard focus only for me worked well there because it came with, I think, the confidence to go, all right, let's go.
Yep.
It's a hard thing to hard focus and let go at the same time because
Right.
inherently hard focus to me means super aware.
Right.
But clearly that's not the case.
Right. It's bird only. You are aware around the bird of of that, just that ghosty image. But again, you're in control of that gun. You're going to feel yourself go to the front edge as much as, not as much. You're going to feel yourself go to the front, and 5-10% is just visually awareness of a blur, a ghosty image of my muzzle on the front side of this target. Once you establish the gun on that front side and you start to sync up or just start to match speed, that's when we start to engage that intense hard focus. It's a learned skill for sure. Breaking it down this in depth, step by step, makes you, like you said, the first pair, you're real conscious. You're thinking about everything that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
whereas
you focus so hard on focusing on the target that
you got to do it. You've got to go out and do it. Shoot a few more pair. Think of it this way. If the bird's moving 20 miles an hour, I want you moving 21 miles an hour. When the gap feels right, let the trigger go. When you leave the bird, if the bird's doing 20, you're doing 30. You're just gassing off it. One of the questions you asked me early on was what changed or what was the difference? Well, I think learning to match the targets, the closer your gun speed can be to the target speed, the more repeatable the shot is. Think about it this way. If the bird takes
you're not using a lot of gun speed.
I'm letting the target determine said gun speed. I tease the kids all the time that I coach. I'm like, if we were dancing, the shooter does not lead the dance. The bird leads the dance. The bird determines the speed of everything you're going to do. Nothing you can do can override what that bird's going to do. It has no idea we're over here. So we have to match what we're doing to the speed of that target. And say the lead's 3 feet. The longer your gun stays in 3 feet as you're triggering that shot, the more room for error you have. The more your gun's kind of whipping through 3 feet, and it's all timing based. So the move that when you're moving too fast, whether you hit it or not is all timing. Whereas I think if you slow the gun down and you're more in sync as you're stretching out to the full lead, much more forgiving, much more repeatable.
Let's try.
And in sporting clays, this game is about being able to repeat said move 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Let's keep it repeated.
Little different than fee task. Fee task, I can get a little wild. I can get looser. I just got to break that bird one time. It's kind of, in fee task, it's kind of, hey, can you hit this? Whereas sporting clays, we're going to set a pair and we need to be able to repeat it.
Oh.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
That felt good.
That looked awesome.
That felt really good.
Really good.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say than that other than just to put that into practice.
And when you feel it happen, you're like, oh, wow. Because I bet you felt, just prior to pulling the trigger, a millisecond prior to pulling the trigger, there was a confidence that came over you that you knew that bird was going to die.
Yeah.
Just because you felt perfectly in sync. You're confident that the gun's where you think it is. All good things.
And it was way more relaxing to not stare at that target for more than a second and a half.
Right.
Whereas usually I think I'd be probably a lot more aggressive, a lot more locked on. Probably try to shoot
I see the biggest mistake I see people, they're measuring lead quite a bit, but at the same time, they're looking at that bird from when it appears all the way to the trigger, and they're burning up what their eyes are capable of, a hard focus. So essentially their eyes are coming off the bird as they're triggering the shot. Very inconsistent.
So matching speed, or at least having gun control, is important. Does that mean that hand speed is not actually something we should be looking for?
That depends on the person.
Okay.
If they're, you meet people, they're kind of amped up. They do everything kind of quick and I call it kind of a jabby style move. I think what's important to understand, no matter what, a lot of times we're a faster moving person, we're slower, but it all happens at the trigger. That's what kind of what I've come to realize over the years is that we can be a little too fast or slow in the beginning, we can be a little too fast or slow at the end, but what's important is right there in the moment we're pulling the trigger, that's when everything needs to be in sync. That's when everything needs to be in control.
So that's why you're saying it doesn't really matter whether you're inserting half a second later or earlier.
Correct.
Providing the hard focus period, or whatever we want to call it, the shot,
into the trigger. That trigger pull. That moment your brain is saying, now and you feel that sear disengage, that's the moment where everything has to be fluid and in sync, and then the most intense hard focus visually on the target. We want to kind of, we're hitting that crescendo or that moment.
So inherently what you're saying is the method is unimportant-ish, providing the end result is the same.
Correct. You see a lot of you see some very successful people with kind of contrasting styles of shooting, but they can shoot winning scores.
Yeah, right.
Now some people are more inclined to shoot a better score on in a given set of style of birds, and we see a little bit of that, but let's be honest, the top guys are generally the top guys no matter how difficult or how different the targets are.
Yeah. I mean, again, I expect there's probably some preference. You might prefer a slightly different course to someone else.
Correct.
But it's always been fascinating to me. You can watch an awful lot by learning you guys.
Right.
Like, if you I've watched you shoot a fair bit, Anthony, Brandon, Richard, George, Ed.
Right.
None of you shoot the same.
Right.
There's some similarities. Like, you all look confident and in control.
Yeah.
That's the similarity.
Yeah. I think in that moment when that gun's going off, I bet you everyone's doing things more similar than they might even think.
All right.
Yep. Let's take a look.
Well, that was a heap of very fascinating information. Information I hope to put to the test back home. For now, it was time to turn our attention to this sim pair with a trap bird and a 70mm looper.
Well,
that 70's slow.
yeah.
When you get to it, slow down. The lead is exactly what you think it is on that 70 Chandelle.
Yeah.
Your gun speed is way faster than the bird. Now, don't get me
trees.
wrong. On a bird, you want to be amped up. You want to get after that bird aggressively. I never tell my students aggressive. I tell them decisive. Decisively get after that trap bird and get to the second target and get synced up, which means you're going to have to slow down. Get to it. Make sure you're slowing down, moving the same speed as the bird. The lead is exactly what you think it is.
I mean, it's the typical sporting PlayStation, right?
Right.
Different in pace.
Yep.
That's where you cock it up.
This
'cause
is-
you mac the
this
first
is
and then
in a-
rush the second.
We talk in America, we talk in a lot of baseball terms, but that would be like a fastball and a changeup. A really fast one and then a slow one.
Okay.
That's got you amped up from the first bird. They're tricking you with speed on the second.
These sorts of pairs are why it's important to follow Zach's advice and never go much faster than the target in the air. After spectacularly missing that 70mm a couple of times, we moved on to many people's clay nemesis.
Our rabbit is very different than your rabbit in the UK or in Europe.
Thinner center?
A lot thicker.
Thicker throughout.
Thicker throughout.
You can
Ours
shoot
are also
handsome.
heavier. So what happens, your rabbits in the UK, they tend to bound. Like when they hop, they will hop really high because they're not so heavy.
They fly.
These obviously bounce as well. It just, to me, it doesn't feel like as big of a bounce. Little different. I mean, the game is about learning to move on moving objects, shoot them with a shotgun. And I embrace the difference in targets from North America to Europe and all over the world because there is a slight difference.
It's fun, right?
It's not that different than hunting. I would say, hunting different styles of birds require some slight different tweaks in technique or just your approach, right? Well, it's not that different in sporting clays either.
It's what sporting clays was born from, right?
Correct.
Hunting training.
Absolutely.
So rabbits are a lot of people's bogey bird.
Definitely.
We might prove this wrong.
Right.
Never usually struggled with them. To me,
Okay.
visually, they're one of the easiest things to see because it's a big disc on the floor. But a lot of people struggle. Why do people hate rabbits?
There's multiple different or reasons, but I think the biggest is realize every time that rabbit touches the ground, it technically is slowing down. Okay? So
Friction
most
on the
people
ground is
most
greater than
people
friction in the
miss
air.
in front of rabbits. Okay? In my opinion, as far as technique goes, it is a very different target. If you're a guy that likes to start behind the bird, you probably never have issues with them. But if you're more of a maintain lead shooter, If you threw a crossing angle at the same speed, same distance of a bird in the air, we would generally always work off the front side. Okay, we might start on the nose of it, but we're going to work on the front side. If you work off the front side on a rabbit and it's doing these hops, you're kind of behind the 8-ball, or you're not in position to react to said hops. So in my opinion, I want to start behind the rabbit or at the rabbit. Once I know exactly what it's doing, I'm kind of reading the hops. I'm going to sync up from behind or on the rabbit. And once I know exactly what it's doing, then I can move out to the lead. In general, rabbits don't take a lot of lead. The leads are very minimal. In fact, probably the overwhelming majority of rabbits are shot maybe just off the front edge to less than a foot of lead.
Yeah. And usually you see the dust go and you think you missed behind.
Correct. A lot of people, a lot of recreational shooters or just newer shooters in general, they see the dust, rabbit flies through there, they think they're behind. They're not behind, they're shooting in front. But like I said, most people are missing in front, but they're also not in position to react to the inconsistencies of said rabbit because they're off the front side initially. I want to stay back. I want to stay behind. I want to match the speed from the back side of the rabbit. I'm kind of pacing it. I'm kind of reading said hops. Once I know exactly what that target's doing, I'm going to come off the back side and I'm going to move into lead. But I'm in position. If I'm behind it, I'm in position to react to a hop. If I'm in front of it and it hops, I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to move the gun to. Except maybe hit the brakes and just hope that I'm in the right spot.
I mean, hoping I'm in the right spot has been the basis of most of the process,
right.
Don't take it away from
me. So
me.
in general, it's a pass through or a pull away from the backside, syncing up from the backside until we know exactly what it's doing and then move in front. Slightly different than some birds, but it's a very reactionary shot, not an anticipatory shot. When we're playing in front of the bird, we can do that on crossers in the air, standard targets in the air with lead, with space. On rabbits, I want to work tighter to the target.
Always.
I think the easiest way to think about it, I want to sync up from inside the lead. I don't want to go to the final lead till I know exactly what it's doing.
Again, not sorry, I don't want to leave you hanging.
No, you're good.
Again, never accelerating too hard because you want to control the move as much as humanly possible.
Right. Stay back, stay inside the lead until the last moment. You know, here we've been talking for a couple hours now about visual discipline, looking hard at the bird, but one element we haven't really hit on a lot is just barrel awareness. And in my opinion, on a rabbit target itself, the necessity to know exactly where the gun is heightened big time, okay? Because in general, the rabbit's on the ground, it's passing all these other bits of clay, rocks, grass, branches, trees, there's just stuff on the ground, right? So it's passing all this stuff, and then so if you get too focused on only the target itself, we tend to lose the peripheral awareness of where the gun is. So I want to see the gun. I want to look at the rabbit as hard as I can without losing track of the gun. I need to know that the gun is on the back edge of this target initially. I need to know where it is as I sync up.
Is it fair to say that the more barrel aware you are, the slower your gun will likely be?
Correct. And I think what's key for people to understand is the targets that we need barrel awareness are generally the slower birds. Where we need barrel awareness is when lead is almost a non-issue, where we're shooting it right at the front edge or we're shooting right at a target. The closer the gun needs to be to the target, the more aware of the gun we need to truly be. So in general, here I've been talking for 2 hours about hard focus on the bird, ramping into hard focus, watch it break, blah, 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 blah. There are some presentations in sporting clays that don't require that intense hard focus. The birds that are slow, the birds that aren't doing anything too crazy.
We're moving up the aiming scale.
We're literally moving up the aiming scale. You know, you bring a beginner on a sporting clay round. In general, they're going to hit birds that don't take lead. They're aiming the gun. They're going to hit birds that you shoot right at. As they get better, they probably don't do as well on those targets as they learn how to look at the bird and lead targets. But there are presentations on this where we kind of got to go back to that beginner feeling and definitively know where the gun is, not I think I know where the gun is. When I'm 10 feet out in front of a bird, putting a big gap on it, that's kind of a feeling of a guess. Like it's an educated guess, but I'm kind of trusting what I'm feeling
the gun into a space.
And I'm just kind of taking a chance with space. These more basic targets are targets where lead is really, really decreased.
City teals, rifle.
Now it's almost the opposite. I don't want to guess anymore. I want to know. I want you to definitively know where the gun is, not I think I know where the gun is. And there's as you gain experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of shooters that'll really hit home and they'll understand what I'm saying.
There's nothing more frustrating than missing the sitter.
Right.
When you know that you would have shot that in your first ever lesson.
Right. Absolutely. And now here we are 10 years in and we're missing that every now and then.
Because you're not barrel aware enough.
Again, this is part of sporting clays. This is why everyone is so addicted. This is why of all the shotgun sports, this is the one that's growing the most, is because there is so many little elements that we need to learn and know what to do. I had a lesson last week. Like, we're in the kitchen. We have all these ingredients, all these different ingredients for a meal, and we need to know, for a given presentation, we need to know which ingredients to grab. Okay, this is what's important here on this presentation. If we try to use the same ingredients on a different presentation down on the next stand, they could be completely wrong and be terrible for what we're trying to accomplish.
Don't put gravy on your pancakes.
Correct. Now, gravy on a rabbit, we need it. Something else, pancakes, terrible.
Syrup. Bring
Terrible.
syrup.
Shooting those crossers back there 2 stands ago. Big gap, fairly big gap. We're out in front quite a bit. If I told you to definitively see the gun too much, that would be the kiss of death. That would be terrible.
Yeah, right.
But on this rabbit,
is when I was being too barrel aware as opposed to just making a gap.
Correct. Again, sporting clays, so many different variables, so many things to learn. That's why we're here. That's why we're all addicted to it. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh yeah. That hop, that little hop. If you had been out in front of the rabbit already, that hop would have made you miss. But because you were at the back edge and then it hopped, you're in perfect position to attack it. Oh.
Felt good.
Really, really, really good. You can see the difference. I mean, you're just locked in. You're perfect. You're tight right there to that back side. Whatever it does, you're in position to.
It's not edgy either. It's just off.
Right.
Feels good.
After we finished filming, Zach went on to explain the concept of windows of opportunity.
You've got to be willing to understand you need a varied set of techniques at your disposal for differing targets. And I tell people all the time, it's not a game. We never say never.
With a rabbit, he suggested to keep this window big and flexible, given the many variables at play.
If you're comfortable with the hop, then you can kill it early. But I think my window of opportunity on a rabbit is probably 2 to 3 times bigger than where I actually shoot a lot of the birds.
Zach, before we move on, I've got a few sort of more basic questions.
Yeah.
But we've covered so much already, and a lot of it is hugely technical and quite advanced. Do you count this as the only way, or is there, as we discussed, a lot of ways to skin a cat? Do you think that these are fundamentals that everyone should be enacting?
I think they're fundamentals everyone should be enacting given the presentation. I think, let's say if there's 5 ways to skin a cat, or 5 different techniques, I think 1 or 2 of them really lend themselves really well to a given presentation, not necessarily all the presentations. I think as top shooters in general have progressed over the years, I think we learned what works best for certain styles of targets. I think the top shooters are doing more things similar on a given presentation than they might admit to you or in their coaching or to other people. But I think we have to be very open-minded. We have to work on differing aspects of the game, things you're not good at or things you don't naturally do really well. And that's how we've progressed. That's why the scores these days, unless you're the guy shooting the score, you almost look at the scoreboard and you some of these jaw-dropping numbers that these guys are shooting.
Yourself included.
Sometimes, yes, sometimes. But if you're not the one that did it, you almost think, wow, that is so amazing. I don't know that I could do that. Obviously, we've proven we can at times. But as we've evolved as shooters, I think we've gotten better and better at knowing what techniques or what styles of shooting works best for given presentations.
The playbook is more developed.
The playbook is developed. The information out there is huge these days. There's a lot of good videos, a lot of good articles to read. But what never changes, or what gets crazier, is that the experience level, or the time it takes to gain the experience, to understand the differences in technique, is only getting bigger. It's a 10, 20 year saga. It's your story.
A saga.
It's just your path of experience.
A basic question.
Yeah.
But one that gets asked increasingly. Gun up, gun down, pre-mount. What's the answer?
You know, when I first came into the game, I started shooting sporting clays around 1990, 91. The rule was low gun. So I spent probably 6 or 7 years of my shooting career never mounting the gun. We weren't allowed to mount the gun.
Okay.
In the late 90s, because that mount rule, it was hard to enforce by scorekeepers, at least here in the United States, the NSCA decided to do away with the mount rule. In the UK, they had already done away with it for probably the same reason. So once the free mount rule came about, we get to do whatever we want. I kind of realized there are certain presentations where having the gun mounted was a huge advantage. If you watch me shoot sporting clays now, I have a 4-hour instructional video. I mount the gun on every shot. I mount the gun virtually 99% of the time in sporting. But I'm also able to move right over to FTASC and go to a low gun and do that at a very high level, only because I learned it so well when I was younger. So I can go back and forth. In practice, I generally practice half and half just to keep my FTASC game, up to speed. But to be honest with you, a lot of it's time. How much time do I have to execute the shot? As time decreases, I need to shorten up or go to a full pre-mount shot. The other variable is the speed of the target. Sometimes if the bird's really fast, I can really have a real active insertion of the gun to the bird. And a lot of times that from a low gun position feels really good. We're going to shoot a really slow rolling Batu here. And I really feel like it's a huge advantage to have the gun already in my shoulder. When we have the gun in our shoulder, we tend to not move so fast. Okay, we don't get the gun moving really quick. So it's a lot of times on that slow bird, I want a quiet gun or a gun that's really still, not moving, as I start my motion or start my move with that target. So there's several key elements of why it can be a big advantage on certain presentations. The other part where people that aren't as experienced as myself, man, that's just less to go wrong. If they put the gun already in their shoulder, they have less of a chance to have a mismount or do something wrong initially and get their insertion to the bird a little wrong right off the bat, which can cause some misses and some frustrations. So there's not real a black and white answer for that question. It's an advantage for certain presentations, and for people that aren't experienced, just less to go wrong.
A trial and error thing.
Yeah.
Try what works for you. Sometimes having a lower gun, so I know for certain times having it out my shoulder is going to make me focus more at the part that matters rather than tracking too long.
And to be honest, I mean, in FTASC, the hardest part, one of the parts that makes FTASC the most difficult is the element of the mount. If you do not have a really good mount, either it's not fast enough or it's not precise enough. In the way I shoot or the way I think about it, I'm trying to mount to a specific spot around the bird, predetermined, so when that gun hits my face, I'm in a certain spot. I have to be that precise. Sometimes, in my opinion, the hardest shots in FTASC are trap shots and teal, because the mount you have less time, and the precision, the necessity of precision is at the ultimate. Yeah. Yep. When that gun hits my face, I have to be in a very, very specific spot.
Interesting to shoot this sporting style, and then to watch you shoot it fit that style,
Right.
and see what that actually looks like.
Okay.
Very interesting target. Very controlled gun pre-mount, right? You barely moved it through a few degrees.
Right. What's really important for people to understand when they're going back and forth VTASC or low gun to mounted is that just the action of mounting the gun, the process of mounting the gun generates gun speed. So on this same shot in VTASC, I have to be really careful to not mount the gun too fast, because if I do, I come out of sync. I'm moving faster than the bird initially than I was planning on. So in VTASC, again, this is more of a sporting video, but going back and forth,
There's a lot to
is
learn
that
between
the timing of your mount in VTASC has to, again, match the speed of the said target. It's not just, you'll see shooters that are more inconsistent. They have one mount and it's one speed, okay? Whereas the best shooters are gonna mount the gun in sync with the speed of the target. So when the gun hits my face, I have much less of a tendency to be moving too fast.
Big takeaway from what we've learned today is that syncing yourself with the target, regardless of whether this is pre-mount, low gun, swing, focus,
That's right.
is key.
The
So
key.
when you're reading the target, you're not just reading the line, you're very much focused on, right, my timing for this target must be
Correct.
admirable.
Full.
Very different move, but still very controlled.
Right.
You're moving the gun through a slightly wider arc, but it's all set.
Correct.
Poetry, mate. Poetry. Human poetry. Should put you in a gallery.
Shoot it. I really think there's a handful of instructors here in the US that really break it down, probably dissect it all, more so than the average European top shooter.
You guys are sports obsessed.
Yes.
You understand the concept. It's
Yeah.
not in our culture, right? You're a statistics-based culture when it comes to sport. You're an analytical culture.
Yeah.
When we lose a football match, soccer, if you lost, there'd be like articles about it. When we lose, oh, it's easy, isn't it?
Right.
We're never going to win.
And that's not a knock on any instructor anywhere, but I think we analyze this game to the nth degree.
Zach, one of the things that all pros agree on, buy a good gun, stick with the good gun.
Right.
I'm a terrible case study. I'm more of a gun guy I guess than...
Every time I see you, you're shooting something different.
Yeah, but that's what brings me pleasure. I'm never going to have your ability, so I'm going to enjoy the process. And
There's definitely a joy in acquiring and building and setting up new target guns or hunting guns even. I think in this sport, it's just critical that you pick one of the better guns. In my opinion, there's 3 or 4. In my case, I just love the lockup of the DT11, but probably the thing that sets it most apart from the other guns is just, this is by far the best performing production barrel in the world.
see, I didn't believe it. I genuinely always called it out. And then Beretta gave me a call and said, come to the factory, we will prove you wrong, because I've always been hyper skeptical. And then actually seeing the science.
The longer tapered bore, that initial spike in recoil is reduced, but the downrange patterns are absolutely phenomenal. I've broken many birds past 100 yards shooting half choke, 20 thousandths modified.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. I feel like that pattern kind of opens up to a usable pattern at 20 yards, and it just stays really, really effective way out past longer than you would even imagine.
I guess the real thing is it's not compensating for any lack of talent, but when you're at the top level, this kind of stuff really matters.
Stock fit, getting the gun to fit you correctly, and then just shoot. I mean, like you said, I've shot the same gun for over a decade now. That is a huge advantage in my case. I know how the gun moves. I know how it reacts. I know exactly what kind of effort to put in to make the type of move I'm trying to make, and it's like putting on a good worn-in pair of boots or jeans or something. You know, it's part of me now.
Yeah, but you need something that's quality so it actually lasts 10 years.
Right.
I think from a personal perspective, getting something good isn't necessarily going to make you the best, but it will remove any doubt that your equipment is subpar.
Right.
And that's actually really important.
Very important. It's confidence. We talk about confidence in lots of areas in this sport, but confidence in your equipment is huge, whether it be gun, cartridges, glasses, whatever.
Zach, I am obviously a fanboy. You once said in a video, and I'm going to bring this up, it's probably like 3 years ago and inconsequential. It's like a quote you said, you're going to get careful.
Yeah.
I want to dive into that and find out what that actually means.
Okay. In my opinion, that comes down to when the pressure's on, when all the chips are on the table, you're in position to win, or it might not be win. Anytime something's important to you, say you're gonna beat your best friend for the first time, you're gonna shoot your high score ever, or coming down the stretch and you're gonna win your first national championship. That anxiety that we feel is only gonna cause us to get careful. And what I mean by careful is right at the last moment, your eyes are probably going to come off the target a little bit to make sure the gun's where you think it is. If it's a tough target that takes a good amount of lead, you're going to measure that lead right at the last moment. You're not going to be moving in sync with it, and you're going to miss because you're not visually disciplined and keeping your eye on that bird and just being too analytical of the shot right at the last moment. Essentially, I guess what I'm getting at is just being careful takes away from visual discipline. But here's the crazy thing. Not an hour ago, we were shooting rabbits and we were talking about getting careful. Again, another element, another reason in this sport that there's so much to learn and
so much conflicting information.
And it's always conflicting information. There's not any black and white rule.
And there's very few sweeping statements that fit everything other than
correct.
Make sure you break the target.
One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of my own students make is we work on a given concept in one lesson that works really well for a given presentation, and then they go try to apply that to all the targets.
You need a playbook for the stand.
Correct.
And so you don't just go, oh yeah, we worked really hard on maintained lead the other week. That's all I'm thinking of. That's all I'm going to shoot.
Right.
It's a case of flick through the playbook. We've got this pair. This is the shot for me.
Yeah. I remember 10 years ago, my coaching mantra a lot of times to my students was when and where, knowing when and where to do what. If we equate it to the toolbox, we got to know what tools to pull out of the box to apply to this target. If we're in the kitchen, what ingredients do we have to pull out to apply to this target? It's all the same concept.
This is all pre-shot routine stuff, right? This is the basis of pre-shot routine.
Routine, knowing what we're going to do before we actually do it.
Speaking of which, this is pretty, isn't it?
This
gun clubs.
This is probably the prettiest stand we do have at Forest City.
And it was very pretty, as was the whole club. With 2 sporting clays courses, a challenging super sporting course, a covered 5 stand, and a heap of trap and skeet fields, this place had every base covered. As we continued around the course, I took the opportunity to spend some time with world champion Desi Edmonds, asking her take on how to level up your game.
Desi, I've been chatting with Zach all morning, and we've been discussing some proper elite level stuff. And it's hard to, I guess, forget that a lot of people aren't quite there on their journey. Mm-hmm. I'd love to discuss with you who teaches many normal shooters.
Yeah, a big part of my market is the younger shooters, a lot of women, and a lot of just beginner shooters in general. I don't know if it's just kind of a ease or comfort factor. Myself being a female, they're not as worried or scared to try different things.
I think instructors are important.
Oh yeah.
And having an instructor you can relate to, that you listen to,
Yeah.
is like the most important thing with an instructor. They could be
Right.
the best in the world, but if you're unable to communicate and respect and
Yeah.
actually take what they're saying on board, it's kind of money down the drain.
Yeah, and it's being able to simplify everything, right? As you said, a beginner, they have we assume that they understand a lot of things in shooting, but we sometimes forget when we've been shooting for so long, those assumptions are the basic levels of learning. So it's being able to break those down into a very generic or simplified, description, and trying to get them to achieve those on a basic level so that they can start building those blocks. And relaying the information, as you said, is one of the most challenging things as an instructor, but it's one of the most important. Being able to communicate a concept in 5 different ways so that people can understand it.
I asked Zach earlier if there was a moment that he thought was like the level up, and he said it was cumulative, and I'm sure you would probably agree.
Yeah.
But was there a moment in your shooting career you went, aha, and kind of just figured a thing out, a big fundamental thing?
Yeah, I can't say there's a specific moment to be exact, so it's kind of that cumulative, but what I will say is it's kind of stepping outside of the box, outside of my comfort zone, shooting at different gun clubs on different courses, seeing targets that I've never shot before, and kind of pressing myself to shoot the tougher courses and the tougher targets, because the only way that you learn to overcome those obstacles and get better at it is by doing it, especially in this game. There's nothing to replace experience or trigger time. So it was shooting more targets that maybe intimidated me before, or different events that intimidated me before, and that's when I really started to see a progression in my ability, was just going through those failures and those obstacles of shooting birds that maybe I wouldn't have, the year prior. It's kind of a subconscious, maybe Band-Aid. You can hide a lot of the flaws in your game when you're really comfortable in those situations. When you get out of your comfort zone, or the pressure's on, or it's the big tournament, those flaws are going to start to be more exposed, and you have to learn how to work through them.
I guess going back to something Zach mentioned, you've got to be comfortable missing to progress.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think your confidence builds congruently with that, right? The more you experience shooting those tougher targets and the more you go through those failures, the more confident you are in your ability to analyze, right? My ability to read a target, I become more confident in that. The more targets that I see, the more variety that I see, the more that I experience with that. So, yeah. Well,
Zach, Desi, thank you so much for today. It's been an amazing amount of information that we've processed, and we've only really scratched the surface in many ways. I know that there's a lot of content out there that people can go and get by both of you, and I implore you to do that because these guys really know what they're talking about. I guess the final thing I want to sort of look at is, what have you had to do to get where you both are?
I've just kind of lived it my whole life. My parents were comfortable, but I didn't come from a rich family. But my parents made some sacrifices when I was younger, just to get me to events. I didn't go with the whole family all the time. One person, my mom would take me to England. My dad would take me to nationals and whatever back in the day. But as coming up, working my way up, I had some jobs outside of the industry, farming industry in California. But I can't tell you how many times I took my last dollar to enter a shoot, or pulled gold coins out of old belt buckles that I had won to go pawn at the pawn shop to sell for the gold to go to another shoot.
There's a dedication.
It's dedication, and I've been there, and I've kind of been blessed over the last decade or so to really do well and make some real money doing it. But I've just lived it. I've lived it. It was not handed to me by no means.
And my shooting journey kind of started a little differently than Zach's. Nobody in my family ever shot sporting clays. I was never involved with it, around it. I had no idea how to shoot a shotgun when I first picked one up. It wasn't something that I saw, or again, I was around. So my shooting journey definitely started from the very bottom, the base bones. And what I tried to do is surround myself with shooting related things, whether that be content or working at a gun club, or maybe going to the next shoot, like Zach said, trying to find that money, but just taking advantage of the opportunities I did have, grasping for as much information I could get. The shooting community is very welcoming. There's lots of content out there and information, and you need to grasp onto that and learn about it and read about it, so that when you go out to the range, you've got something to work with. You don't have to have unlimited funds to get better at this game. You just have to have the dedication and the sacrifice and the willingness to learn. I think that's one of the biggest things, is being open to new ideas, being open to suggestion, and being willing to overcome those obstacles and learn.
And there you have it. Top tips, expert advice, and an inside look at the world of sporting clays from the best in the business. I hope you've picked up some new techniques to take out on the range and maybe a bit of inspiration for your own shooting journey. A big thanks to Ferretti for getting us all in one place, and of course to Zach and Desi for sharing their knowledge and passion.
Thank you for watching TGS Outdoors. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. This channel would not be possible without the support of our amazing sponsors. They've supported the channel for a long time. We only work with people we love and whose product we trust. If you want to support the channel too, make sure you check out channel memberships. There's early access content, there's some pretty cool exclusive release content.
My view is you never want to let the bird get past you because you can't see under your gun.
And occasionally we go clay shooting together. We just appreciate your support. Even if you can't, your view is great. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.